Okay, so that's recording now. I'm just going to get you to click once on the record button.
Just do it.
I got you.
I'm not going to be,
No.
given that I've had so many media.
You're all good, yeah.
Is it recording now?
It is recording now, yeah, that's right.
So I've been doing a lot of talking, Tim, so you're going to get the husky voice.
No, that's okay.
Campaign, speaking, sort of losing your voice.
No, look,
And you can put that on. I'm happy for this to be fairly relaxed.
Yeah, for sure. No, I'm of the, like I said, I've run for council, so I know exactly all the interviews and talking that you have to do, you know, and that sort of things. But yeah, all right, so we'll get into it. Welcome back to Toowoomba Forward. I'm your host, Tim Entwistle, and joining me right now is independent candidate Suzie Holt. Great to meet you, Suzie.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Tim, for having me, and on Easter Saturday too.
Absolutely.
Over the weekend.
We don't have a lot of time, so considering pre-poll starts on Tuesday, so it was like, do we break it up? Do we do it right in the middle of Easter? I guess we're doing it in the middle of Easter.
Well,
so.
I think people, it's great to have the opportunity to meet and chat, and these informal conversations are really helpful in getting, you know, your listeners and to understand what we've been doing and where we come from and what we're hearing from the community.
Well, let's get into it then, because I think what I'd love to start off with is with you just to introduce yourself, explain why you're running for the seat of Groom, and explain exactly why you believe that you will represent the needs of Groom better than any other candidate.
That's a bit of a loaded question, isn't it? No, there you go.
Well, if you're running, that's what you believe, right?
100%, and I do believe that I am the right person to represent Canberra. So I'm a social worker, small business owner, a mum. I've got 2 daughters, a wife. I've run a lot of projects, particularly in health, and for the last 3.5 years I have been a community advocate. So what that means is that I've actually, on my own pocket, been listening to the community and taking those issues down to Canberra and meeting with parliamentarians to truly advocate on issues that are really important to our region. So around farming, around health, around the hospital. So we've been down there advocating. And so for 3.5 years I've been doing that, which has been such a wonderful opportunity because it means that we've already set those processes and relationships up. So when you walk the hallways of Canberra, it's like I've been teaching myself how to do that job in training. So it means that I have those skill sets and the necessary opportunities to go and meet with people and collaborate on behalf of our region. So for that reason, I've been doing the job. So the fact that I'm not a member of Parliament and that those doors have already been opened from all sides of Parliament, so the left, the right and the minority parties. So those people have been prepared to see me and really listen, and we've been able to potentially look at what those issues are that need addressing in our region. I've been doing that job. So to come back to your question, because I've been going down there, opening those doors, making those connections, collaborating, already highlighting and addressing the issues, I really feel that that's why I'm the right person for the job. I think people, what we're hearing is that they are genuinely wanting a local. So I've lived in the region for over 30 years. I am passionate about the region, so my husband and I have worked across regional Queensland. We know that the regional voices are ready to be heard, and I have lived and worked and breathed those issues across a number of areas, and I'm ready to take those voices down to Canberra and make sure that they have really good local representation.
Great, yeah, thank you, Suzie. I want to move to campaign strategy and what you're doing to reach voters this election. What does it mean to be a fresh start for Groom?
So a fresh start for Groom is that people are looking for a local who is listening to the community and doing the hard work. So we have been for the last 3.5 years going out into the community and engaging with them and really encouraging people to participate in that democratic process. And so it's about doing politics differently and putting community front and centre of those decision-making processes. So when you go and talk to people about issues that that matter to them, whether that be around kitchen tables, whether you go into a pub, whether you turn up to events, whether you have conversations at the shopping centres, which we've been doing a lot of. It's those tens of thousands of conversations that you're listening to. So we've been engaging the community because the party that I'm representing is the people of Groom. So someone actually asked me recently, what do you use the word we, and when I use the word we, it's not about me because I'm the person at the front leading the campaign. The we is actually the most important part, so it's actually the community behind you. So you're bringing people together with a drive to actually see something better for our region. So that's the community that we're taking down to Canberra.
Sure.
So you might I might have just forgotten your question.
No, I get what you're saying. Well, fresh start for Groom. Basically, it's the desire to listen, to collaborate, represent the people. Can I ask you just one question though on that topic? Do you believe that Garth Hamilton, up to this point, and the Liberal Party in general, who have held the seat of Groom for this long, do you not believe that they have been advocating strongly enough or listening enough to the people?
So if we were to take back to the tens of thousands of conversations that we're having with the community, the biggest message that we are hearing before any issues are that people are tired of divisive politics. They are tired of not being heard. They feel that the major parties don't represent them anymore. So that could be the LNP or Labor. And they are looking for someone who understands local issues, and they actually want someone who will take those issues and take them down to Canberra. So to come back to a fresh start, I think people want to see the seat of Groom become competitive. So there's two things. We had Tony Windsor up on the weekend, and he reminded me of what a parliamentarian should be. So when you go down to Canberra, you're actually doing a job. Your job is actually to represent your electorate and the issues for your region, and to go down there and advocate and prosecute those issues and do your best to make those changes so that you're actually making positive change for your region. So it's not about politics and that divisiveness of party politics. It's actually about seeing your role as getting on with the job. So one of the things that people have loved, and I'm coming back to your first question, is that they want someone who turns up, who is reliable, who is trustworthy, who knows people's kids' names, who knows that this morning I had a fellow come in, we talked about the NDIS, but while we were sitting there having that conversation, I know that this person's having a lot of issues with their kids. I've seen their kids and witnessed it and spoken to them about that. It's about those relationships. So when you build those relationships, which is something that we've now been doing probably for over 3.5 years, I think that is the fresh start.
Sure.
So, you know, we've been doing work with farmers out west, and because I have been meeting with them, met with them around their kitchen tables, met with them on their paddocks, had forums out there around their issues, enabled them to use their voices to advocate for their issues. It's actually that local representative, so it is a fresh start.
Sure, yeah. I get you, yeah, appreciate that, Suzie. I wanted to sort of address the elephant in the room head on. Probably the biggest question that a lot of undecided or sceptical voters are of your campaign is Climate 200 and the funding that you have received this election compared to previous election. Could you just walk us through what is the involvement of Climate 200 in your campaign, and what is that, what impact is that having in your policy and your beliefs and your convictions going into Parliament?
So before I answer those questions, it's really important that I feel that if you're asking, so I've actually put a call out to all the other candidates, and no one has taken up the challenge that I have been honest and showed integrity in raising my donations. To date, no one else has done that. So it's really important around that integrity that I demonstrated that by saying, look, if we want to win the seat, we need to be winnable. So I know the seat's winnable. We need to have funds. So it was a kickstart to our campaign to get the campaign going. We've then had over 500 local donations coming into our campaign, which I think shows a level of local support for what we're doing, because it really is about the community and where the community is sitting and how they want some positive change and a positive voice down in Canberra. So, we can't compete with the major parties. Everyone knows that an independent, and as you know, having run for council, you need a kickstart into your campaign. So it was that one opportunity.
And how much was that kickstart? Can you disclose that?
Well, we put that out in the media, 50,000. So I'm hoping that you ask all other candidates those questions around their funding.
And was that for this election, or was that for 22?
No, so this was for this election. And I think that to have that coming in, it just helped get our campaign off and running, and we've been able to then bring in, as I said, those 500 local donors, which is really exciting. That's a message, a clear message from the community about that desire to see something better for Groom and a fair go for Groom. The fact that community are investing in something positive through those local donations demonstrates that people are wanting to see something better and different and positive. So we run our own campaign. I have stood for my own issues that we haven't swayed on, which is around regional voices need to be heard in Canberra. We've stated very clearly that I'm determined to see a policy initiative that was started locally by John McVeigh, that we actually want our regions to be represented. We want more money coming back to the regions. If 40% of the nations live in the regions, we want 30% of the budget coming back to regions. So there's a policy sitting there called Regions at the Ready. It's a white paper. We want to enact on it. We actually want to say that it's time that Australia had a national regional strategy and that we were heard and represented well in Canberra.
Sure. Did Climate 200 have any say over your branding and marketing?
No.
Designing logos and things like that? No. Because it's interesting that in terms of the candidates that have received marketing support, political support from Climate 200, many of the ones that are in regional seats have removed the teal colour from their marketing in favour of orange, yellow, and other colours. What was the decision to hide that teal colour from the original call foods that you had before to replace them with the orange?
I'm actually going to call the meeting. Can you just stop? Yeah, just stop.
Do you want to stop that?
Yeah, I do. I actually want to call it off now. Is this going live?
Well, no, yeah, but...
No, we're going to call it. I just want to have a conversation with you. We're calling it stop.
No other candidate has asked to stop.
I know, but I'm going to call it just for 2 seconds.
Okay.
Just call it. You and I have a chat.
Yes.
So, Tim, you've run for politics.
Yes.
We're having a bit of a heated discussion around. I have put a call out because I think political donations, people need to be honest, including the Liberal, the Labor and the Greens and One Nation for that matter. All parties need to be really honest around their donations.
Sure.
Do you know, in the last couple of weeks, we have seen people make pledges to people in the community. Now, I know that some of those people are donors to those major parties. Mm-hmm. So, do you know, it's about integrity, isn't it? And politics needs to lose the corruption. We need to have integrity come back, a strong knack, which is so important because people are really, really tired of politicians lying and not telling the truth. So I have put it out there around my donation and funding because people are sick of the divisiveness. Sure. They are just over it. They are tired of it and they actually just want someone to get on with the job and do what they're elected to do, not be held by any promises or donations or those major companies or mining companies. They actually want someone to go down to Canberra, do what is the right thing for their communities. we are falling apart at the seams with our health system. We've got a hospital that is just falling apart. In fact, they're talking about workers going off-site. Now, if we want the Olympics to come, we need that hospital up and running. Worse than that, our private sector, from a health perspective, is crumbling at the seams. So we know that because we have been having those thousands upon thousands of conversations. When you've got people in our electorate having to travel to Brisbane for eye surgery, that is not good enough. We actually deserve to have the best health care for the region. We cover 300,000 people out west. We need to make sure that it is tertiary, a level 6 university. We need to be able to make it sexy, for want of another way of putting it, so we can attract the best quality workers here. We can train and grow our own and actually make this a beacon for health and regional health.
Okay. So, well, Suzie, I want to be clear as well, is that I have many questions here. That was the only C200 question. That's literally the only one. And the rest, and just hang on a sec. The rest of them is to give you a voice to share your platform and your convictions about this party. So I want to, because you're talking about this stuff about the eye surgery, you're talking about expanding the hospitals. Let's talk about that.
Fabulous. Okay. Because
now,
we can.
And I want to be clear as well, is that the reason why I did not ask Garth Hamilton specifically the word for word, where did your money come from, is one, I am an independent interviewer. I am not informed by any other political party. I'm not paid by anybody. I'm not affiliated with anyone. I literally spent $0 to get here. So, and the second reason is because I firmly believe in the intelligence of the Australian people and the people of Groom to understand where the big political parties are coming from. I firmly believe, and I'm convicted in my belief, that when you are an independent, there is an extra level of scrutiny required to understand where that money is coming from. That is more required than a political party, because we know where money comes from. Now, we will disagree on this, and that's okay.
Actually, I'm going to agree with you, because I think you're right. As an independent, one of the things that I actually love about being independent is that actually we are put to that high level of scrutiny, which is exactly why we.
But you just said that you disagree with the fact, and you put it out there saying that everyone else should have the same level of scrutiny as you.
Well, they should, but we're at the moment we are put to that extreme level of scrutiny because...
Correct, and that's what we're doing here today.
And it's exactly right. And I have challenged the parties and the major parties to put their money where their mouth is.
Sure.
And actually make sure that the community knows that if you're being funded by those big corporate organisations, or for that matter, people in town, the community has the right to know. The thing about the major parties is that those donations can be hidden because of how they do things. So when elected and I am down in Canberra, I am driven to actually see electoral reform and donation reform, because it should not be those donations that inform policy. It actually should come back to locals, standing up for locals, listening to locals, people who know the local issues and actually take those issues down to
And I've got to tell you,
Canberra.
Suzie, that's probably one of your biggest winning issues right there, is transparency in donations, transparency in where it's coming from. So I'm super interested to hear your standpoints. If you're happy to continue with the interview.
Fabulous. Let's bring it on.
Let's do that. Okay. So Suzie, I want to ask you now, switching over to the fast rail. Do you support a fast rail from Toowoomba to Brisbane? And what will you do to make that happen if you support it?
So we've been championing fast rail. In fact, prior to the close of Parliament this time round, I'd been advocating with the government of the day to see how we could progress that fast rail. I actually prefer passenger rail. I think that is probably a more realistic option for us. I think one of the things that we should do that is in sections. So I would love to see that rail get down to Withcott, make that a transport hub, and then have obviously buses up the range as at least that process of getting it going. So I think what we need to do is we need to actually make sure that we get a business case up and running. There was a small one, $12 million. We actually need to get that back on the agenda. Particularly with the Olympics, I think that is an opportunity. It currently isn't on the Olympic agenda opportunity till 2032. We need to change that. So I support the rail. I think the best way is to make it come down to Withcott and then have it come up as a first point.
That's it. Yeah, that actually Goth said a similar thing about having Withcott as the main hub and then building that business case from that to say that lots of people that are here.
I think the biggest expense is how we get that up the range.
Yep.
So in a cost of living crisis where we're concerned about where we're heading at a national level around budgets, I think that is not a bad option, and I think the majority of people in our community support that. I've been talking to the mayors, particularly down in Gatton, around that process, and they're really supportive of it. The biggest thing that we'll offer is young people want it, older people want it. It opens us up to tourism, which is huge. It's exciting. It gives people that opportunity to jump on a train and go down. I just think to get the project up and running, to get that hub to Withcott is the first point of call, and I will be driving that when elected.
Thank you for that. What do you believe is causing the cost of utilities, groceries, everyday living expenses to go up? And what do you believe that you can do for Groom to address those issues?
Yeah, we've been out. It's so interesting that we're hearing that from young people, older people. We were at the shopping centre and I had a number of people say to me, give this down to Canberra, and it was actually their grocery docket, and they were showing me what they were buying. I think we need a supermarket ombudsman, and I think we need to work to get stronger regulations. I'm for looking at divestiture to actually address that. I think we really need to jump on board with challenging the supermarket prices. One of the biggest things is competition. So if we actually had more competition with supermarkets, it would actually start to address those issues. So,
would you support breaking up the big two? And
so I'm all for looking at competition. I think at the moment you've got the two major supermarket chains.
Sure.
I think if we created a space where there was more competition, even in our electorate, I think that would actually start to see those prices reduce.
Sure.
I know we've been looking up at High Street, and that's Drake's, which is independent, and people shop there because, one, they enjoy the process. It's actually a really nice supermarket. It's personal, it's local, it's friendly. I know that I buy my fruit and veggies from local fruit and veggie people from the farm shop because I'm supporting a local business. It's local. We're encouraging jobs and opportunities. So they're my three.
Yeah, sure. What about the cost of electricity going up? What do you think is causing that?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. I have asked those questions around electricity prices going up. For a lot of people, all their responses is they want affordable, reliable and secure electricity. I think it's actually just where we're at through the economy and where we've been at. I think we've seen a levelling out of those prices coming through. I'm sure that the incentives that the previous government has probably helped that at the moment. I think we're going to see that shift coming through, and electricity prices will likely increase coming through.
Sure.
Depends on who gets in and what the government does. The biggest thing we're hearing about electricity is businesses are really struggling with keeping with their electricity prices. I think we really need to do something around how we manage that coming into the next election.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for that. And then just
can I make a comment? It's really interesting when we're out there because we ask that question around how people want to see the future of energy and what that means. I mean, there's a lot of conversations around batteries and incentives around batteries and solar panels. Toowoomba, interestingly, has one of the highest uptakes of solar panels, which people don't quite realise. I think we're the fourth highest city in the state for solar panels. So I think if we're offering solar and we're looking now at batteries, we need to make sure that they come to the region. So those opportunities to get the batteries have to come here. We also need to make sure that if we're going to do that battery program, that one of the major parties is promising. We need to make sure that those batteries are made locally, that they're Australia-made, and that they are. So there's 2 companies in Queensland that we would love to see jump on board, but we also need to have some incentives for young people if they're going to do that. They need to be able to afford it. So
Gotcha.
There's some interesting things out there. People are not asking me where their electricity is coming from. They just want affordable, reliable and efficient electricity.
Sure.
And they just want to get on with it.
Is nuclear a part of that conversation in your mind?
We have not had any, I have asked the question. We have not had any discussions around nuclear. I met with John McVeigh from TSB, which is Strat Basin Enterprise. I think I've said that incorrectly, but TSB, and I asked him around nuclear and the options for nuclear. At this stage in our electorate, no private sector wants to invest.
Sure.
I've asked the farmers, do you want nuclear and do you see there's an opportunity? The biggest concern I'm having is that there has been no consultation in our electorate around that discussion for nuclear.
Sure.
While we have the LNP in Queensland at odds with energy from a state and federal perspective, we're going to get no consensus. So I'm supportive of our state government where it's heading around energy, and that's my job as a federal member, is to support your state.
So would you, just in principle, would you support lifting the ban on nuclear energy so that there can be a discussion about it?
So we've not heard anything around that. I think in a cost of living crisis where you're asking people to look at a plebiscite or we'll call it a referendum for your viewers, so you'd have to take that vote back to the community. That costs a lot of money.
Do you think that requires a vote to get that lifted?
In Queensland it requires a vote.
But at a federal level, lifting the ban on nuclear, that's a federal issue. So would you support?
So the federal level can come in, but what you're going to see is that the federal government, say the LNP get in and they drive that, they're taking, people don't like that big stick approach to government, so they're going to take a big stick to David Janetsky, our local member who was the energy minister, and say, you're going to actually do this. So we've asked constitutionally, it would require that constitutional change first, and you've got to put that to a vote to Queensland. Okay. On that, I do think there has been an opportunity to put that to the community. We could have done that at the state election. You could have put that to the Queensland community. Do you support that? And they could not get bipartisan support to do that. Pat Weir and other members of the state LNP have definitively told me that nuclear is not on the agenda.
Sure. Can
I just, on a personal level, John Howard threw those opportunities around for nuclear 20 years ago. Queenslanders naturally love the concept of an aspirational concept of nuclear, but when you've got a government that cannot provide accurate costings and cannot reassure the mums and dads that their hard-earning taxpayer dollars are going to support nuclear, when you have no private industry wanting to invest at this stage, there's a whole lot of processes around that conversation that needs to be had.
Sure.
More than that, if we go nuclear, we are investing in another country to supply nuclear reactors to our region. We're hearing that people don't like that. So we need to actually think about, if we're looking at nuclear, we need to actually invest in industry in the sector so we can grow that in our universities, grow the people around nuclear. And I think those conversations, if they're heading in that way, will head that way.
So appreciate you sharing what you've been hearing from people and what they're saying to you. For you personally, do you support nuclear? So
my job as a community independent, it doesn't matter what I hear, what I think personally around nuclear. My job is actually to listen to the community. Sure. And take those issues down to Canberra. All we are hearing from the community is that they want affordable, reliable, and would efficient.
For you personally, would you support lifting the ban on nuclear, at least to have that conversation? For you personally?
personally, it would have to go to a vote to the community. And if we are listening to the community, they do not want to spend the money to take to a referendum. So I would argue in a cost of living crisis, I do not want to put extra burden on the taxpayers' dollars to actually put out a referendum on...
So on a hypothetical then, let's say we weren't in a cost of living crisis and they went through and the referendum started and the resounding voice from Groom said, we support nuclear, we want nuclear. Would you support it in that regard?
So if the message from our community, and we had extensive consultation, which means we would have to have town halls with all of our local people, we would have to...
So grant all of that. If they all said yes after the rigorous research that, and studies and debates that you would want to have, would you agree with Groom and go along with what they say?
So that is the message. If we hear from after all of that extensive consultation and that the research and the science stacked up and that it wasn't going to cost the taxpayers' dollars, the mums and dads out there, a whole lot of money, we would throw that to the community.
Okay. Moving over to housing affordability, what do you believe is causing house prices to go up? Specifically here in Toowoomba, where the median house price has risen to $604,000, $400 in Toowoomba City.
We just need to open up supply. Supply. Like, we just
What's holding up supply?
Well, clearly we need to provide councils with adequate funds to ensure that they have the necessary foundations like sewerage, like lighting, to actually invest in opening up those blocks of land for supply. Clearly that is a message, loud and clear, we need more supply of housing. It's really interesting, the first house that we bought in the region, we paid $107,000. Actually, I think we bought it from the original founders of We're Sitting Here in Hot Property. I think they were one of the original founders.
Sure.
That house is on the market today for $900,000. We couldn't have afforded it. We got knocked back by 2 banks back then.
Sure.
We wouldn't even get through the door now. So my big issue is that we need to have supply. I'm really keen to see a $2 billion national regional infrastructure fund to go to the regions to actually ensure that councils have the necessary funds to actually make sure that they can open up those supplies through those utilities.
Do you think that demand plays any role in it? Increased demand? Do you want to reduce demand? Because there's only one half of the equation. Is there something you would want to do to reduce the amount of people who want to be getting homes or need to have homes?
Look, I think, when I think of demand, it's probably not what I think of the fact that the regions have become really attractive for people. I think since COVID, we've actually seen a huge number of people wanting to have a better quality of life, so the regions have suddenly become really attractive. So we've seen an influx, particularly from down south, of people wanting to come to Toowoomba. I mean, who wouldn't want to come? We're the best place in the world. You and I love it. I've lived here for 30 years. So I think that that supply there, we're going to see probably an increase of 80,000 people into our electorate over the next 20 odd years. That's huge. So I think we need to plan now for the future. So I'm really keen to work collaboratively with the state, local, and argue down in Canberra how we can effectively meet the needs of ensuring that our council has the adequate resources to cater for that influx of people.
Would you support any policy to reduce immigration numbers? So
immigration is really important conversation that has to be had in the next election, in the next government, sorry. I think that we need to be really mindful that without people from overseas, our hospitals would not have staff. Places like Swickers, Moore's Trailers, industry like Oaky Beef, and a number of our big sectors would just fall apart at the seams because they rely at this stage upon people coming from overseas to fill those jobs.
Sure.
Swickers has around 1,000 people from overseas on the floor out there that are working for them, and a lot of those people from overseas. So I think that we need to think about migration. We need to think about it carefully. It's a conversation that needs to be had. But we need to think about the regions. So
sure.
If we're going to increase local manufacturing, which I'm really keen to do, increase our hospital, we need to make sure that we have overseas workers. We need to make sure that we need to make sure that we have workers to fill those spots. During COVID, we could not get staff to come in and adequately fill the hospitals because we rely upon overseas workers. So until we can grow our own workforce locally, which I'm committed to do medically, from a hospital perspective, we need to make sure that we still have regions are really covered. Otherwise, those businesses are going to fall apart. So
do you believe that immigration plays a role in the increase of demand in the housing market?
So if you have a look at the data, around 4% of university students who are coming overseas are buying houses. What we're hearing on the ground is that it's actually a supply issue. So I just keep coming back. If we increase supply and adequately...
But say if 1.8 million in the past 5 years have come through here, and let's say...
Oh, they're not coming through to Toowoomba.
Well, not Toowoomba, but to Australia. And then you have, and if you, let's say we build 100,000 more homes, that's still not enough. You build 200,000 more, still not enough. 300,000, 400,000. I think the current, and if I'm wrong, I will correct it in post, but as far as I understand, the Labor Party wants to build 100,000 homes over the next 10 years. That's still not going to be enough if those immigration numbers keep going up. So I'll just ask you this. Is there a scenario where you would support restricting the immigration numbers to just the people, like you've said, who are nurses, doctors, great additions to society that make things better, that help us to increase manufacturing, and restrict it in that sense so that we can reduce the amount of demand that's coming?
So I think you've actually nailed the policy incredibly well, so thank you for listening. I think you're right. I think we need to be really cautious. I think we need to have that conversation. I 100% agree with you.
So just yes or no, let's grant everything that you just said, that we pick the immigrants that will fill all those needs. Would you support a policy to reduce after that?
I think that what you're going to find in that next election coming through is that immigration will be an issue that's going to be raised. I think we need to be very mindful for our industries here to survive and our health sector to grow, that we need to make sure that we have the appropriate people coming in from, whether that be skilled migrant workers.
I'll ask you one last time and then we'll move on.
Otherwise, workers like Morton Co will not survive. So we need to make sure that the people we're bringing into the regions are appropriate for the regions.
So I'll just ask you one last time and we'll move on. If we grant everything that you said, Morton Co survives, the hospitals get built, the nurses get filled, would you support a reduction in immigration after that? Yes. Okay, thank you. So I want to talk about this big question that the majors have struggled to answer, but I'd be very curious to hear how you respond to it. Do you want house prices to go down or remain stable and boost wages to be able to afford these homes?
So listening to the community, I'm going to tell you every single person I speak to wants the house prices to go down because they want to be able to buy a house.
Sure.
I had a great chap come and speak to me the other day. He said that he probably got the last cheapest property in Toowoomba. He paid $400,000 for it. Whether that's right or wrong, this is his story. And he said he can't afford to buy a home again. I actually challenged him. I said, because he's actually paid that off, he could actually then potentially invest in another home. Look, I think that housing, we have not had since 1945 an appropriate housing policy. So we need to have a bipartisan approach to housing, which is what good governance is all about.
Sure.
So the major parties have thrown policies around. You've got Labor offering trinkets, the LNP offering a whole lot of options on the table. I think at the end of the day, we need to actually have housing is a crisis, particularly in the regions. We need to have a really big conversation for the next election, next government around housing affordability, what that looks like. Because we're going to put people like my kids, they can't afford to buy a house.
Sure.
And I'm going to tell you, unlike Peter Dutton, we're not paying for my children to buy a home. They've got to work hard for it. And that's, I'm just being a mum here, like we did, and have to pay, save up for the deposit. Do you know the biggest concern that I have? So you asked me about housing. When you've got young kids, I sat in a room with 20 young kids the other day. The reason why they're being put off by buying a house is their HECS debt.
Yep.
So they're just seeing that HECS debt, and they...
So would you support the Labor Party's policy to reduce HECS debt by 20%? Yes? Okay.
Yes. Can I say that something further on that?
Sure.
We actually want to have a discussion around looking at HECS in the regions.
Yep.
So if we've got a housing crisis in the regions, we want to attract particularly health workers in the regions. We want to actually have further incentives around HECS.
Right, so having like a discount to attract people to the regions.
We definitely want that. So I'm actually going to drive that change, because it's only fair that that if we're providing 40, that money going back to the budget, we actually want a bit of stuff coming back to us in the regions.
Yeah.
So we're going to actually
I've never heard that policy before. That's actually really interesting.
So we actually want to drive a hard bargain. So we actually want to say to young kids out there, young people out there, that we want to actually look at HECS reduction to attract people here, which actually then comes back to giving them that opportunity to think, yes, I actually can buy a house, or I can probably get the rental that I want. So if we want to bring young people here or grow our own workforce, we actually think that there should be incentives and a further reduction around HECS for young people who want to live, work and stay in the regions, because we know that if we train young people in the regions, 80% are going to stay. So we want to grow our own workforce. We have to look after them in the region.
That's a cool idea. And then so just really quickly, do you want house prices to go down, remain stable, or boost wages to afford them?
Well, I want to boost wages to afford them.
Okay, cool. All right. If you secure the seat of Groom, you may become a deciding vote for which major party will be able to form government in a hung parliament. Who will you be siding with if that's the case?
Yes, so this is a really interesting question. My job is to actually go down there and say this is a golden opportunity for Groom. So this is a once in a lifetime that we may never get again, to actually go down there and say we actually want these things addressed for our region. So I am determined to get a national regional strategy. So I'm going hard to actually go down there and negotiate to get that over the line.
So whichever party will sort of get that over the line for you?
Yeah, so having said that though, I'm very, very mindful that our community is a conservative community. I myself, as you can see how I'm dressed, I'm a conservative member of our community. And I'm very mindful that that's where our region has sat for a very, very long time. But this is an opportunity for regional voices to have a seat at the table.
Sure.
It's an opportunity for us to get investment back to our region, which is why for the last 3 months we have been spending a lot of time meeting with TSB, meeting with the Chamber, meeting with local organisations, meeting with the university to actually say what projects do we have that are shovel ready. Just on that, disappointingly, when you've got local council, TSB and the Toowoomba Chamber who've put forward documents around what they see as their vision for the region, and only one of those is the same interest, that says a lot about our region, that we are not working together and we are not on the same page. So I'm determined more than ever, which is why I have been building those relationships for a very long time, to come together so we can have a shared vision, a shared goal, and take that down to Canberra. To do that, we actually need to work with local council, which is why I'm going to encourage you to run publicly.
It's not happening, guys, but thank you. I appreciate that.
Because unless we give them support to actually say, well, what is it that our community wants, whether that be investment in a conference centre or investment in an art gallery or investment in all sorts of big ticketed items like the hockey centre, which we're supportive of, or stadiums around the ridges. We actually need to think and have a vision that's the long haul for our region.
Sure.
I'm determined to work with council so we can have that ready to go. So when we get elected, we can actually go down to Canberra collectively and actually start negotiating from a region, not just a lonely voice.
Can I ask, so just taking a step back from that, because I want to say that I hear exactly what you're saying in terms of you will want to go into Parliament, negotiate the best deal possible for the Toowoomba region, or sorry, I should say for Groom.
Yeah.
So I respect that and appreciate that. I just want to park that for 1 second and just say, in terms of the two major parties' policies when it comes to their housing policy, and we'll just quickly rapid fire these. Liberal or Labor, which housing policy would you sort of be more inclined to support?
Actually, I'm going to support my own policy, which is leaning towards Helen Haynes's policy. So I've already been working with Helen Haynes.
But you won't have the say to actually convince those major parties. They want to go through with their stuff.
Actually, I'm going to disagree with you, because a really good independent works collectively, collaboratively, and builds those relationships. So I'll give you an example. Helen Haynes has been working with the other independents like Bob Katter to ensure that the regional voices...
I don't think is Bob Katter an independent? He's part of his Katter party.
So effectively he's an independent. They see him as essentially an independent voice down in Canberra, even though he's part of that Katter party. But that shows the level of collaboration that you've got. So actually I'm interested in my own policy, which is around making sure that we get the infrastructure necessary so local governments have the funding to open up supply.
Yeah.
So my job as an independent is to go down and advocate for that.
Sure.
So regardless of the policies of the major parties, I'm interested in ensuring that those amendments or that policy about a $2 billion regional housing strategy gets over the line. That's my job, to go down there and advocate. It's actually not to say I'm going to support the Labor Party or the Liberal Party. It's actually to say, this is what I want for our region. I want to get this on the table. I've been building those relationships with the other independents, the crossbench, and also the Senate. And actually, we want to see this as part of your policy.
Sure. And I think that there is a true power in being an independent in that front, because you will be able to negotiate to have certain elements of what your specific housing policy is implemented into their stuff.
So,
but do you, so let me rephrase the question in that sense. Which party's current housing policy has the most malleability to insert and be more aligned with what your vision for housing is?
So I'm going to just throw that back to you, because when government gets in, all bets are off. So when we get down there to Canberra, my job is to go down and to say to those major parties, this is what we want. And I will advocate. So you can. So the thing is that we have the ability as an independent to put forward our own policy. We have the ability as an independent to put forward amendments to make sure that they're represented. My job is to do the job for the community. Just on that, we've been working with Tony Windsor, so he actually navigated that process, and he was an independent down in Canberra. What he got for his region as part of those negotiations was health. Not only for his region, but greater health across the regions. He managed to get an equestrian centre. He managed to get a whole host of issues, including putting the regional strategy on the table for discussion. And it got chucked out by the next parliament. So what you've got sitting here is that my job is not to align with the party. My job is to represent the people of Groom.
Yeah, sure.
And they are telling me that they want funding and support to local government. So I'm going down there to prosecute that first and foremost.
Yep.
Do you know that people forget that when you go to Canberra, you actually have this opportunity to sit and meet with the major parties and start negotiating those. So negotiating with policy. So you can actually be part of informing policy down there. So you know, whilst they've made all these promises and, you know, you've got whatever on the Labor Party, I think they've got 5%, then you've got the Liberals suggesting other things. Actually, you know what? You forget that we're going to have members on the crossbench who are listening to communities, who are understanding those local issues, and actually we're going to work together to actually start informing that policy.
Just for the sake of time, sorry, Suzie, I want to get through the rest of the questions here. And I appreciate that perspective. I can see that you strongly believe in advocating for Groom and getting the right policy across. So thank you for that. It is, but I have to express right now that your role is multifaceted in terms of what you will do in Parliament, in the federal government. Yes, you are an advocate for Groom. Yes, you are going to be fighting for these issues. And yes, we are the ones who will be holding you accountable for those things. But also you're going to be on the global stage. You're going to be on the Australian national stage.
That's right.
And so the reason why I'm asking you these questions to say, which party will you find most favour in? Which major party are you going to have a connection with? And I'll finish this. The reason why I'm asking this is because there are real concerned voters, and I've put it out to the people through Facebook, through private messages, through questionnaires and surveys, and the main thing that they're saying is, I'm open to voting for an independent. I just need to know what government that will form, a Labor or a Liberal one.
So until the election comes, actually I'm going to throw to you the polling that we have seen consistently for the last probably 3 weeks would indicate that it's going to be a majority government with the ALP that's coming through.
I mean, those polls are crazy. They said that ScoMo would lose in 2020.
That's exactly right. My next thing to tell you was that they looked at Scott Morrison and said, so when you go to Canberra as an independent, you have this opportunity, it's golden. So for me, the policy that I'm going to take is that I want to see that regional, we'll keep with housing. So I'm going to work with Dr. Helen Haynes, and we're going to start that collaboration to see, who's going to help us support and navigate that process. The biggest thing that we hear is that people actually don't understand in the community around legislation and how you can actually inform it, because we expect naturally it's the major parties and that we have to side with one of them or the other. So I'm likely...
You will have to side and endorse a Prime Minister, endorse a party if there is a hung parliament though.
Actually, do you know that some interesting concepts have been thrown around is that can we, whether I agree with this, but there's some conversations around that democratic process. Do you know when our constitution was formed, all that time ago, no one was a member of a party. So we were all actually...
there are some big discussions about whether or not there should be political parties. I agree with that.
Yeah. So when you think of forming government, my job is actually to listen to the community, work with the chamber, with council, with state election, and to say...
We'll have to keep moving. I'm really sorry, Suzie, but finish your thought.
No, let me finish. And to say, well, who is going to best meet the needs that I'm hearing from our region to form that government? I'm mindful that we're a conservative community. I'm mindful that people want to see prosperity and economic growth for our region. They want a vision for our region. But at the end of the day, my job is actually to negotiate what's going to be the best outcome for Groom.
Sure.
And to put that first.
I would say yes, and that includes government issues, selecting prime ministers. So I appreciate you for that. On the topic of Indigenous issues, and speaking of that conservative side of things, Groom voted resoundingly 76.3% no to a voice to Parliament for Indigenous peoples, as enshrined in the Constitution. Are you willing to share how you voted on that referendum and how you intend to advocate for Indigenous issues?
Yeah, so I did not participate in any of that campaigning around...
Did you vote in the referendum, or did you abdicate from voting?
I actually believe that voting is a private issue regardless of how I voted. I will tell your listeners that I attended one event for the No campaign. I went and listened to Jacinta Price, and then I listened to a number of events across the region, and I agree with you that the clear message from our community was that they were not happy with the process of how the government proposed that referendum. And the thing that I will advocate for is that we need to make sure that we work together to close the gap. I actually witnessed Bob Katter on the floor of Parliament talking about those needs. We've been working with people like Suzie and Adam around justice issues and youth crime, and I think we need to bring it back really to local issues to make sure that organisations like what they're doing are well funded. We've been meeting with the Aboriginal legal service who are inundated. They need local resources. They need to have people who are interested in the law and youth justice to grow their own workforce, so particularly around lawyers in that area. We've spoken to the university about initiatives to see if we can start growing our own workforce so we can make sure that local people are being represented by local issues. So as a social worker, I obviously have a vested interest to ensure that all people in our community are looked after and well represented.
Appreciate that. Just quick follow-up.
I did not support how the process of the that vote went. I think it was disappointing, and I think that the divisiveness that it created has been appalling.
There were issues there.
Regardless of that.
Can I ask you just quickly? So you said that you went to Jacinta Price's speech, massive at rumours, where she resoundingly said no to the voice to Parliament, and you've mentioned that to the Conservative voters of Groom, that this is what you've done. Just quick yes or no, would you support Jacinta Price's proposal for a Royal Commission into sexual violence and assault in Indigenous communities?
As a social worker who's actively participated in a number of those processes already, in fact, I was a significant contributor to some of those processes. There has been again and again those commissions, Royal Commissions that have been put out to the community. I think listening to our local people, which is what I'm interested in first, they actually want to just get on with the job of being well resourced.
Sure.
So my argument is, rather than wasting bureaucratic and government funding to do another Royal Commission that is just another talk fest, people are tired of the talk fest. And you look at someone like Jacinta Price, who wants to cut back on bureaucratic spending. What we're hearing is, we've got the solutions locally, we've been working really well, we've got the data, just help us with the investment.
Sure, so it's a no to supporting that because of funding.
So I think that a better use of resources and the taxpayers' money is actually to bring it back to local organisations and invest. One of the best things that we could do locally would be to invest in a youth hub. If we're actually one of the regions that has high crime, why haven't we got that golden standard here?
Sure.
If we're one of the regions that needs to have investment around those communities that we're talking about, actually jump on board and support us locally with that investment. Just don't tinker around the edges. People are tired of bureaucratic waste.
Gotcha.
Tired of royal commissions that don't get anywhere. It's the same as with the vets. You know, we've done this incredible process around veterans and royal commissions. Actually, those people are suffering. They are suffering in our community. They want action and they deserve action.
Sure. We're in the last three questions now, Suzie, so thank you for sharing your perspective and thoughts. The first question that I want to ask is just on the topic of foreign policy, because again, as a representative for Groom, the impacts that you have here will be nation-reaching and world-reaching. As you know, Groom has a large evangelical Christian population, also has a growing Muslim community. Both of them have strong opinions and feelings about the war in Gaza right now. Would you support and continue the Labor Party's push for a ceasefire or would you be more open to supporting Israel with military aid?
I'm just going to say flat out that I take a humanitarian approach to the war in Gaza, that we have to stop the killings. And the majority of people out there do not want to see that the continued appalling waste of lives. So that's my...
Do you support the ceasefire?
I take the humanitarian approach that we have to stop. Enough is enough.
Okay. And do you support sending military or funding or even boots on the ground to Ukraine?
So as a representative, I would definitely have to...
because there's a lot, we have a military base in Oki, we have a lot of young people here in Groom that could be sent to a war should something like that break out.
100% agree with you.
They would like to know from their representative, would you support sending them to Ukraine?
So I think that that's something that we're going to have to see policy come through in the next government, and what that looks like. Do you know
I don't think
that
there's policy around wars.
Actually, it can go straight from the Prime Minister.
The Prime Minister can make that.
decision.
And so you'll be a direct advocate to the Prime Minister about these issues.
Actually, regardless of what I think, the Prime Minister can actually decide that,
Correct,
whether or not
yes.
we like that.
You have no power in that regard, but you are an advocate.
Yeah, so it's a really interesting proposition. There's actually on that, there's a lot of discussion around should parliamentarians be involved in that process of choosing should we go to war or not. And it's a really fascinating discussion to be had, because I'm pleased you understand that, and not a lot of people understand that the Prime Minister has the veto.
He has complete authority, yes.
Yeah, to go there.
So would you be, if people were putting you, if the deciding vote for them is saying, listen, I've got brothers, I've got sisters in the military, I just want to make sure that my family will be looked after, will Suzie Holt be supportive of increasing the Australian presence, or even creating an Australian presence?
So I'm going to throw to you that something that I'm really interested in from our local area around defence is actually increased spending for defence, particularly because of our electorate. Before any decisions are made about boots on the ground in Ukraine, or boots on the ground anywhere for that matter, those discussions have to be held at a local level. We have to have a seat at the table, because you're right.
Sure.
It's going to impact a huge number of people in our electorate, and also from the nation. So this is the thing that John McVeigh, so I'm going to just throw some of this back to you, is that when John McVeigh made those decisions at a national level, the thing that he did so beautifully, which is exactly what a community independent does, is they bring those discussions back to saying, listen, I need to seek some guidance, which is why we would come back, and we need to make sure that...
So your official answer is you don't have enough guidance on this to make a decision?
No, that's not true. I think the decision is that if we're going to make those decisions, we need to bring that back to the community, and we need to actually involve the community and involve Oki and involve those things. If I was to say my biggest priority for Oki at the moment is that I hear they do not have air conditioning in some of their barracks, which is not good enough given that we actually are one of the biggest, we're a big army base. So I'm more invested in actually working with the council to make sure that our barracks are up to scratch.
And I would just argue, just briefly, that a soldier's concern is probably, am I going to Ukraine, more than am I going to have the aircon on? So just a quick in principle, would you support boots on the ground in Ukraine with Australian soldiers?
I have not seen that policy come through. It has not come up.
I'm saying in principle, like regardless of policy, like would you support Australian troops going to Ukraine?
I'm going to tell you that those decisions are a decision that has to be made carefully, because it impacts broadly. It's more than it impacts such a huge number of our people in the community.
It's okay. Yeah, we'll move on. Last two questions. Between China and USA. So the electorate of Groom is responsible for billions of dollars that get exported out to China. In terms of Australia, China accounts for 35% of our total exports. And now, here in the Darling Downs, here in Groom, we have billions of dollars of beef, cotton, barley and timber that are exported to China. how will you be advocating, and again, I know that you're not in that seat because the Prime Minister has that authority, but what are you going to do to ensure that that relationship with China maintains while also continuing the strong relationship with the US military? Or do you believe there should be a strong tie to the US in that regard?
So if I was to throw to you something really interesting that I'm keen to see happen moving forward is that I'm a social worker. I will always take that diplomatic approach. I think that what Trump has done, particularly for our export sector, has been appalling, and the interesting conversations that I've been having, and once again Helen Haynes and I have spoken about this, is that I think it's an opportunity. So I spoke to an exporter yesterday out in Pittsworth, and I said to him, will you be impacted by the tariffs and what's been happening, and do you see this? And I threw it to him as an opportunity. He said, you're the first parliamentarian to ask me that, and I like where you're heading. And I think this is an opportunity for Australia, particularly from our region, to start renegotiating exports to Europe. And I think that those they fell apart in 2023. We failed. I don't think we did a good enough job. And I think that given the global changes that we have seen, that we need to really.
So you're interested in diversifying our exports to Europe, reducing our need for China? Is that what you're hearing?
No, I think that just we need to actually have
or away from the US, are you saying?
Yeah, so I'm really keen to see that that we actually open up those doors because of what's happened in the US.
Sure.
I think this gives us a huge opportunity to actually start looking at that European market. Another thing that I have been speaking to is that we've actually increased our opportunities with New Zealand, which is amazing. That's terrific. So I think this gives us an opportunity to pivot. And I would really, I was in Canberra when those conversations were being held around Europe and those opportunities there. And I remember speaking to someone from France, and they were initially really excited. I think just given the global change that we're seeing, and people are wanting some, I just see it as an opportunity to expand. So in Pittsworth, I was talking to an exporter. They export huge amounts of their produce all over the world, New Zealand, Dubai, and they just said that given the changes, they're now seeing the most exciting opportunities for Europe, which would be huge for us, and I think it just gives us that opportunity. We've been talking, you raised the issue around chickpeas. I'll talk about chickpeas. We've been talking to companies who are exporting to Bangladesh, those markets in India. I think that TSB is certainly driving that shift to India, which is exciting. I think it's just this opportunity to expand and think differently, but also look to the future about markets that we haven't tapped into before, and working with them to open those opportunities.
Sure.
I think because there's consistency globally around what's happened in the US, I think that I love the term unlikely alliances, but I think it's actually those incredible opportunities for growth and prosperity, particularly from our region around our beef, produce. I was talking around someone who sells Easter eggs everywhere globally. How exciting, just for our region if we have amazing opportunities. So I think that's something that we should be open to and needs to be discussed at the next sitting. Probably it'll be those quick discussions.
Thank you. Last question. What's your final message in 30 seconds or less?
I've been doing the work. I've been down in Canberra, building those relationships, getting on with all sides of Parliament. I'm listening. I'm a local. I understand local issues. I'm here to champion local issues. And whilst, people may not always agree with me, the fact that I will always listen to our community first, take that beautiful John McVeigh approach, listen to your community first, think about it then at a regional perspective, and then take at that national level. I'm here to get the job done. I'm here to work hard, and I've shown that I've worked hard for 3 years, going to Canberra, paying that for myself and already championing the issues, and I would be a breath of fresh air. And I think today you've seen I've got a bit of feistiness in me. I'm not interested in playing party politics. I'm interested in doing politics differently. I'm not interested in the argy-bargy. I'm actually interested in getting the job done for Groom.
Sure. Suzie Holt, thank you for your time.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much.